Okay, so welcome to the podcast, kind of episode one. I did an introduction to the podcast. You might want to go back and check that out just to kind of see what this whole thing is about, to see if this is something that you're going to enjoy. I do have one or two people lined up that I'm going to be interviewing here in the near future, so that I can start getting some of that type of stuff on this channel. As a side note as well, I think what I'm going to try to do on some of these, especially if it's just me talking, and maybe when I'm interviewing as well, to just kind of break up the monotony of like looking at this mug and stuff like that. I might go and do some overlay footage of some drone footage that I have, or pictures. We go hiking and stuff like that. We live in a rural area, so I even have drone footage of them harvesting corn and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it might be interesting to overlay some of the footage with drone footage and pictures and all that kind of stuff. So I might do that. I might try it on this one. I don't know. It depends on how I feel. But anyway, so now to set kind of a baseline, I think that when you get into very deep discussions about humanity, spirituality, what you deem as acceptable when it comes to things like economics and government policies, I think there has to be a very strong baseline of how you picture us as human beings. Who are we as humans? Because I believe I just mentioned this a little bit on the introduction, that who we see ourselves, or how we view humanity, how we view ourselves, the rest of the people around us, whether it's in our community, our country, and those around the globe, will directly influence the amount of injustices that we're willing to tolerate. It will directly influence our foreign policies, our structures and setups inside of our government, economy, how we view religion, all of those types of things. And so that is just kind of, I think before we go much further on the podcast, I think that I want to just kind of lay that little bit of a baseline on maybe how I view things, and just kind of talk about it a little bit. So as I had mentioned previously, that I come from a very religious background, very political background. Both of them would have been very much conservative. I had a very nationalistic view of the United States, which is where I'm located, obviously. And that heavily impacted how I viewed the rest of the world, how I viewed people outside of my religion, and even outside of my political party. And not only politics didn't just dictate how I viewed people within my political party and those outside of my political party, but so did my religion. My religion was heavily tied into how I viewed people in politics. So for one thing, I even remember hearing people say that, they don't know how you can be a Democrat and be a Christian at the same time. Because there are literally some people within conservative Christianity that believe that if you're liberal, then you're like a baby killer. I mean, I've literally heard him say that. And I know that liberals have things that they would say about conservatives as well. They just think that conservatives are warmongers, and that they just always want to be fighting wars and blah, 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 blah. And even though there might be a little bit of merit to some of the, cliches about the certain political parties, they're highly, highly false. They're very divisive and very aggressive and hateful, I guess you could say. I don't really care much for either side's narrative on those things. But having said that, I mean, there are some ways that it influenced me in the negative way, what I would consider negative now. I did look at the United States and those living within the United States as being exceptional. even though I looked at America and Americans, I guess, as being exceptional, I still thought that we stood for, uh, I guess, the equality of all humans, even outside of America, that we fought to liberate the oppressed, that we always, our foreign policies and all of our military engagement was for the betterment of the world. And I totally believe that. I never once, thought that we would have engaged in some type of a military conflict for selfish reasons when it comes to America. And obviously, my eyes have been open to that very, very much. And because of that, and obviously also because of 9/11, I mean, that was a horrible thing that happened to America. There's caveats to that, but I joined the military through that time because I looked at that as my my duty. I was 19 years old. I was a perfectly healthy young adult at that time, and I just thought that that was what I should do. There's some people that look at the military as like an evil thing because they see how we have wielded our power against other nations, and so they always want to take it out on like the soldier itself. Even right now, with like demonizing Russian soldiers, even though I know there have been some atrocities there, they are believing the same things that I believed when I enlisted in the military. Now, we invaded Iraq after I was in basic training, and I ended up going to Iraq. So you could argue that I didn't, really have a choice as to where I was going, Afghanistan or to Iraq. But nonetheless, I mean, I looked at it as my nationalistic duty to go and defend the United States. And the same thing is true with even the Russian soldiers right now, and they are not necessarily sitting there hating, Ukrainians or anything like that, but they're just believing the nationalistic propaganda that they're being fed, that they are actually liberating Ukrainians, that they are there fighting for the freedom of other Ukrainians, that there are Ukrainians who want to be Russians. They're believing that, parts of Ukraine should be Russian because it always has been Russian. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. And so they're actually people in the military and are very compassionate people, very good people for the most part. I mean, you have exceptions to that, obviously, and they are normally the most passionate people that you'll find, and some of the best people that you'll ever meet in the world, because they actually believe in what they're doing. And the only downfall to that, I guess, is that you've kind of bought into maybe a nationalistic lie, believing that what you're doing is actually to further and better all of humanity, and you're there for that reason. So you're there with very good intentions, but the downside of it may be that you're not necessarily, you may be believing a lie. After I was in the military, and this was years after, probably at least 10 years afterwards, if not more, 15 maybe. I have to think about that. I kind of went through the whole questioning phase of my spirituality, my religion. I questioned everything. Some people would call it deconstruction. That's fine. I've kind of got tired of that word because I think it's just kind of a cliche at this point, but I went through that. And it brought into question all of my other beliefs, which includes how I view other humans. And when I started seeing that all of us humans actually are not defiled creatures, when my religion was telling us that we are all fallen creatures, that, this world is full of evil, there's a demon behind every bush, the devil is, killing and preying on so many other people. Just the whole religious outlook on humanity in this world was just so dark. And so it caused me to view people and the world and the earth itself, animals, everything. It caused me to put everything into a religious box and it kind of cast a dark shadow over everything. And so even though, in Christianity, it would have told us to love other people, and there are people who do that well within Christianity. I understand that there are people who actually love other human beings in Christianity, so this is not saying that everybody doesn't view other humans in a healthy way. But I know that for a lot of people, or I feel for a lot of people, including myself, it did get me to look at others in a not so healthy way, because if you looked at somebody outside of the United States or just outside of Christianity, you kind of looked at them as they were kind of lost anyways. And if they're not on your side, if they're not, then that means that they're not on God's side either. Okay, so chances are they're going to be doing things that are not healthy for humans. Abortion was obviously a big topic, so you're kind of taught that if you're not a Christian and you're, pro-abortion, then you just believe in killing babies, and that's where the whole baby killer thing would come into. And if you would look at Middle Easterners in Islam, let's say they're Islamic Muslims, you were taught that the reason why they essentially attacked the United States and had problems with the West was because they hated God. They hated our religion, and they looked at us like the white devils, and so they just wanted to come kill us because they wanted to push their faith across all of the world. And we were kind of the last stronghold of God and everything, and of Christianity, to defend the faith. And it taught you to look at those types of things and not necessarily look at our foreign policy and say, hey, maybe these people actually have a problem with us because we're doing things to them that is not very nice. And maybe also they don't like Christianity because they see what Christianity has done. And now, once again, I don't necessarily think that Islam is any better than Christianity. I personally don't understand why you have so many people that are afraid to criticize Islam. I kind of get it in the sense that some people realize that Christianity needs to eat a little bit of crow right now, so they don't necessarily want to be critical of other religions because they realize that Christianity hasn't been any better. However, I don't think Islam is any better than Christianity, and I don't think Judaism is either. I don't really have any use for the dogmatic type of religions, the Abrahamic religions, and I think they're very destructive. And what I'm trying to get to is that it heavily influenced how I viewed other people. And if your religion is telling you that other people are damned, they're lost, if they essentially die right now in their current state, they're going to go to hell anyways, it normally leads to you believing that even though they may be well-intentioned people, they don't have the right mindset because they're not full of the Spirit or something like that. So they are ultimately working with the devil, that they're working against God, they're working against America. Like, once you have that us and them mentality like that, it actually allows you to do extreme amounts of evil to other people, and you can justify it and rationalize it. As hard as it may seem, or as ridiculous as it sounds, you can actually rationalize doing horrible things to other people because they are something else. They are something other than you. Like, you could almost dehumanize people. Soldiers and everything are very compassionate people, but when a nation asks you to go in and kill other people, they are kind of getting you to dehumanize them. That is almost the first thing that has to happen to a degree that you kind of have to dehumanize the people that you are oppressing, that you are fighting, that you are hurting. Like you that's almost inevitable. You pretty much have to do that. Normally that's even a propaganda thing that happens within a nation, I guess you could say, before you actually put boots on the ground. And normally a nation will use a religion to do that. So you can definitely, religion and politics and everything will heavily dictate how you view another human being. Once I got away from the whole thing of believing that, you know, I was something special and part of some special religion, some special nation, I very much had to bring into question how I viewed even things like my time in the military and stuff like that. I had to really struggle with not belittling myself as a human, because I had to realize that my intentions were not to do something bad, even though it was almost like my country used me in its games. Like they preyed upon my compassion, they preyed upon my beliefs, they preyed on my personality to get me to go do things for them that maybe should not have been done. So, and that can be a very big struggle. And I think that's something that we always have to remember, is not necessarily to demonize or dehumanize the people. There's people that don't like the police force right now. Don't dehumanize or demonize the police themselves, the human in the uniform. But you can criticize the system all you want, and that's fine. I don't have any problem with that. But very, very few times is it okay to actually demonize the person, you know, either in the military or as a police officer, or even, if you look at other things, even like a drug dealer or something like that, you have to start realizing that there's probably a reason why that person is like a drug dealer, and it's not just because they're a bad person. There's probably some kind of a system that was working behind the scenes that either pushed or almost forced that person into doing what they're doing. There may just simply not have been any other financial opportunity out there for that person to take advantage of. I guess I can't, even though I don't hold to the Yahweh, God, or whatever, I do believe that there was probably a dude Jesus that existed, but I don't necessarily believe as him being something special that I am not, or that you are not, or anything like that. But I also don't consider myself an atheist. Now, having said that, I don't blame anybody for being an atheist. I actually think that there's a lot of very healthy views on humanity that atheists have. I believe that if you experience goodness and kindness and love from an atheist, you're kind of experiencing it in the most pure form, because why else would they be doing it? I mean, they're not doing it to try to please some god or gain brownie points in some far off heaven somewhere. They're being nice because they're nice people. So I do still hold a sense of spirituality, in the sense that I believe that we are something more than just another, I don't know, as just some bag of flesh and bones walking around. I do believe that we contain some form of a higher power. I believe that there is some form of a higher power. I don't necessarily know what that is. And so, having said that, I will, right off the bat, I will admit, there isn't any really good theological or scientific basis to argue the existence of a God or a higher power. And that is one thing that I will be very upfront with. Like, if you would go and debate an atheist, I think that what you do need to understand is that there really is no good factual evidence out there to support your belief in a God. I mean, to me, it makes sense, but it might not to somebody else, and I'm completely fine with that. I'm not the type of spiritual or person that believes in a God that thinks other people need to as well. Because I actually realize and I actually believe that I don't have any good outside evidence for it. It makes sense in my mind, and it makes sense inside of me. It makes more sense to me in my line of reasoning that there would be a higher power. But I know that that isn't necessarily true with somebody else. And there's no way for me to prove it theologically or any other way that there's a God out there. There's no good argument for it in that regard. I mean, you want to say philosophically, if you want to sit there and two people want to use reasoning in a debate, and not even so much debate, but just kind of talk through their beliefs and their line of reasoning and stuff, you might come up with a little bit of a better argument for it that way, if you even want to call it an argument. But it's not evidenced by any means. So believing that, I believe that all of us at our core are very, how would you say, special beings. We are supernatural beings. I don't necessarily limit that to humans. I don't necessarily limit us being supernatural to just humans either. I know that there's a very big struggle that I have with how I view this. I'm still not 100% sure how to flesh it out. But I also believe that a dog is more than just a dog. And I don't know if there's certain levels there. Like, I don't know what to make of that yet. I'm still very much kind of working my way through that. And that's also, once again, part of the reason why I want to have this podcast, is because I actually want to talk about stuff like that, because I haven't made sense of everything that I want to talk about, and I hope to get some very good knowledge and insight into some of those subjects in areas that I simply haven't thought about before. But I do look at us as like supernatural beings, where we almost have like this supernatural abilities, that we have powers that we don't realize. Like, I think that we live the way that we do in this messed up world because we don't realize the type of powers that we do have. I'm not even necessarily talking about the powers as far as, in a traditional Christian way, but I do believe that we can essentially create an existence that actually helps and is for the better of everyone. I think that we live in a world that we have created, because through our own powers, through our own creative abilities, through our own cognitive abilities, all of those types of things, we have created the world that we live in now. We are responsible for things that are happening now. We are responsible for the wars, the poverty, the starvation, the disease, those types of things. I believe that we have kind of, in a way, created all of it. And I think that we have the power as a collective to create the world we want to live in. And in that sense, I believe in evolution in that sense. I don't necessarily just believe that we were created beings, like 6,000 years ago we were created. I just haven't heard an argument, whether it's religious or scientifically, that just makes me go like, oh, that's definitely where we came from. So I just really don't bother with it. However we came to be and however long ago it was, I don't really care. We're here now. And I do believe that we're on an evolutionary process from, the beginning of recorded time till now, to where we are evolving in a certain direction, and we can kind of choose what direction we want to evolve in. We can continue to evolve down a line of, poverty and economics that subjugates other people to the betterment of others, where it benefits my country and, impoverishes another country. We can continue down that road, or we can evolve in a direction where we all, as a human species, can equally benefit from everything equally the same. and I know that would be a long process. I'm not saying that it's just something that we can sit down around a huge table, talk about it, and come up with some kind of a system that's going to help everybody. I do believe it's going to have to evolve. I do think we can start taking steps in that direction, and we can start putting kind of that fork in the road, and that leads to, and start building a completely new road. Even not even putting a fork in the road, but just building a completely new road. I think we can start heading in that direction. I would like to talk about how could we humans do that too, because I don't have that figured out either. But I believe we have the ability to create. I believe that we can create a world where there's probably not really too many sicknesses or diseases, where there's not too really any poverty, where we can have a nice, healthy life without the fear of wars, and also individually then. So what about our powers individually? Like, I think that I struggle with that very hard, because I do believe that me as a human being, I believe that I have powers that go way outside of my knowledge. But I think what leads to almost even creating power is searching for it. I think that humans, the way that we kind of display our power is discovery through searching. I think that when we search, for instance, the expanse of the universe, we believe that it is like 13.8 billion years old, so we believe the universe is like 13.8 billion light years, maybe across or whatever. But I kind of believe that the further we look, the more we're going to be able to see. It's almost like we're going to be able to create something that doesn't exist yet. Like if we build a telescope that can look further than the James Webb Space Telescope now, then I think we're just going to see more and more and more. And it's almost like we create this new realm outside of what we can see right now. I think you could almost say that nothing exists outside of what we can see now. But there's an infinite possibility of how much could exist. It all depends on how far we can see. Because I think our observation of things kind of pulls things into reality. And I even know there's a little bit of a quantum science behind all of that too. And I also think that the same is true when you go down to the quantum level, to the small level, that it seems like scientists, the smaller things they can see, the more they discover there's something smaller than that yet. And I don't know all the scientific terms, but you've got like your cells, and you're like, that was a huge discovery, but then you've got nucleus of that cell, and then you've got protons and electrons and this, that, and the other thing, and then they discover things like quarks that are even smaller, and it continues going down smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think that the more powerful instruments, the more technologically advanced they become, the more imaginative they become, and they look for it. They're like, hey, this makes sense that something like this should exist, so let's look for it. And through their combined focus, their directed energy and looking for something, they almost create what they're looking for. And so I believe in kind of powers like that. I'm not even necessarily saying that I believe that I should, I've got this certain power, so I'm just going to go fly like a bird now. I'm not even really going into that direction. I'm just saying I think we have powers to create a world and a universe that we want to live in. And I think that will come through our collective concentration, almost like directing a laser beam of energy towards something, and through our observation of it. And I think that this means that we are some kind of a deistic type of being. Not that I am God, but that me and really everything I see around me is a part of God. And, and to be honest with you, you almost, and I know this is sounding crazy, but we don't even have proof that we ourselves and the world and the universe that we see around us isn't actually parts and structures of a larger being. I mean, if they're now looking into things like multi-universes, multi-dimensional universes, and what if our universe is like the cell of a larger being, and then you get down to even like planets where they're the electrons and protons swirling around or whatever. I mean, and as humans being like quarks or something. I know this is sounding like really crazy, but we don't even have proof that we're not even a part of something like that. And so, and if that larger being kind of is God, I'm not saying that that's what I believe that that's how it is, but I almost look at us as being part of a higher power to that degree, that everything that is here, whatever that higher power was, kind of entered into creation, entered into the universe or multi-universes. Everything that exists, that higher power kind of entered into, and us as human beings are a part of that. So I would be a part of that higher power, and because of that, I hold at least some of the same powers that higher power held. That is kind of who I believe we as humans are. I do believe that we are part of a higher power. And when I don't look at other humans as being damned versus me being saved, looking at us as saved versus damned, I have to agree that all of us that live on this earth have all the same rights. We are all equally special. We are all equally valuable. There is no person out there that is not valuable. It doesn't matter if you're an American or not. It doesn't matter if you're wealthy or poor. It doesn't matter if you're sick or whole. It literally doesn't matter. We all hold the same value. And spirituality and looking at us as some form of a higher being, I believe, does help me actually place value on humans. It is a little bit hard for me to be able to place an actual value on people and on my life without believing in some form of a higher power. That may be through my history, my past, being conditioned that way because I was religious at one time, and that could just be a kind of a bleed over effect. And I understand that. It may not make any sense to somebody else, and that's fine. But that's just who I am. That's where I'm at, and I don't know, maybe by next year that could be completely different, but that's just where I'm at right now. Having said that, I think that we, even in our, as an individual, we can, to a degree, create our realities. Obviously, the outside reality, the reality of the collective, is still going to bleed into our micro reality, I guess you could say, that every family kind of creates a life for themselves, but you kind of have to operate within the social reality that is around you. And I think that because there are a lot of people that don't really realize who we are as human beings and what we're capable of doing, have just kind of bought into the whole lie that our nations and economies and everything have set around us. So the social systems and structures that are around us. There are many people that are drowning in their careers. They're very successful. They're very good at what they do. But many seem to be unaware that, and possibly have never even thought of the fact that there could be a different way of doing things. I have talked to so many people my age and older, into their 40s, that, I mean, they're doing very well in their careers and at work, and they just are like, what am I doing? Like, what the hell is going on here? Like, why in the hell am I doing this whole work, eat, sleep cycle? Like, my kids are growing up, and I'm barely at home. I am working just so that I can have a house and a car that pretty much supports my career. I'm not even working to be able to do the things I want to do. I'm literally working so that I can have the things to go back to work. And I'm working to have things that numb me when I'm at home or that refresh me when I'm at home so that I'm recharged to go back to work again. None of it is really for me. I mean, really the only reason why an economy is paying me is so that I put that money back into the economy and just continue the cycle. And I am making money, they have to pay me so that I can buy some nice things like a TV, and that we can go on maybe a 1-week vacation in the year, or that I can go, hiking somewhere because we have a car to get there, right? But that is more to refresh me and even give me an illusion of being successful than it is anything else. And there are so many people, even from my background, from the extreme, even conservative background, from the religious background. I'm talking about Amish and Mennonite people here, okay? You don't get too much more conservative than that. And people from that past that are starting to go, what's going on? Why are we doing this? There has to be a better way. So collectively, there is a conscious development that is spreading throughout the world, and even here in America, where people are starting to realize, or it's starting to take effect, that this is not who we're supposed to be as humans. And I think people who are essentially drowning in their careers and who are depressed right now, some of them may be that way, and they've never actually had the conscious thought that this is not who I'm supposed to be. This is not who I'm supposed to be as a human, as a person. But it's just something that has always been that way, and have never really truly second guessed it. And they are just going through their mindless cycle of going to work, taking care of their kids, dropping them off at school, taking them to soccer practice, coming back home to eat dinner, fall in bed, and just do it all again the next day. Our schools are essentially more of a production center to just produce more mini-me. I almost look at these systems as living things, like something that we have created that has taken on a life of its own, and that actually are alive almost in the sense that they're almost like a juggernaut, that they feed off of humans and the energy that we're willing to put into it. So these systems, like economic systems that cause you to wear yourself out, and that it ultimately ends up draining all of your energy, and by the end of your life you're just so wore out that it just kind of spits you out at the end for you to die, and that's kind of what it feasts on, and that's just kind of how they continue going perpetually through the generations. Is that we have started these systems, we have created this world, these presidents and government officials and stuff that we are kind of in there as figureheads, but they don't necessarily make major changes to any type of a system. They are more, I think that they're perpetuating the system and don't even necessarily realize it. And I don't think that they really have much of an effect one way or the other on what that system is going to do. One thing that I would say is that, we have this view of like the demonic coming from a religious background, and I kind of look at these systems much the same way that I would demons, I guess you could say, because we have this thing where people say they're fighting their demons. And I think they're onto something there. I think that these demons are almost something that we as individuals have created, that have kind of detached themselves from us, and now they're tormenting us. Whether it's alcoholism and the things that you face from that, or even maybe things that were done to us, whether it was as a kid, as an adult, traumatic things that have kind of seared themselves into your reality, that you just can't get rid of it. You can't stop thinking about it, and you've kind of created this energy, almost all of its own, that now once again is perpetually vexing you, so to speak. And it's almost like it has taken on a life of its own outside of you. And I mean, I do think that to a degree we can choose to feed it or starve it, but that's an oversimplified view of things as well. And that can also lead into shaming people who are struggling, and that's not what I'm about, because I mean, trust me, I know what it's like to struggle and really not having a choice in it. I mean, it's there, that does exist, and we don't necessarily have full control over that always. Some people may disagree with that, but I've just had enough of sitting there and telling people that, well, you know what, if you would change your mindset, or if you would believe differently, then you wouldn't be dealing with what you're dealing with now. And I don't agree with that at all. But I do think that to a level, at least us humans, even it could be collectively, somebody else could do something to you, assault you in a certain way, or treat you a certain way as a child, that could ultimately end up almost creating the demons that are impacting your life now. And once again, I'm picking on religion here. I almost think that Christians suffer from more demons than anybody else, because that's where their focus is. I think that once again, if you focus on things such as the demonic, then you're going to create them, and that's what you're going to see. I think in a large way, when it comes to things like that, you create that reality within yourself. I don't view things out there as demonic anymore, and guess what? I don't really suffer in that way anymore. I'm not saying I don't have problems, but I just don't prescribe to the whole demonic world, and so I don't suffer from it, because I'm not giving any life to it. I can create that, or not, you know. And so that's kind of where I sit on that whole thing. I'm going to have to wrap this up, because I'm kind of babbling here, and I'm not even 100% sure I'm going in the direction that I ultimately wanted to. Religious and spiritual views impact how I view humans. It also impacts, it just keeps trickling down, and it also impacts how I view things like the planet. Obviously, where I come from the conservative background, you know, global warming was a hoax, climate change is a hoax. I don't know how I feel about that. I would actually love somebody to come on here and talk to me about that. Just because it is so hard for me to make sense of it all and on what's going on, because I was just told, well, it's a sham, and this is why. And so in order for you to actually start considering the other side of it, you actually almost have to retrain your brain. Your brain is almost not even capable of thinking that way, because it's never done it before. It's almost like exercising a muscle. If you've never used a muscle in your body, it might be there and you might be capable of developing it, but until you exercise it and develop it, it's really no use to you. And so that's kind of the same thing here. Is I don't really know what to make of that whole thing. I do believe that our climate is different now, even different from when I was a kid. Yet there's also the talk of climate going in cycles. But anyways, even regardless of what I believe when it comes to climate change, I am much more conscious now of what I do to nature, how I pollute it, and what I started recycling. Is something that I never did before, just simply because I actually care what I do to this earth. I don't believe anymore that this thing is going to be destroyed by some returning God who's going to come down and just burn it all up in the end. So this is going to keep getting passed down to other human beings for as long as we are able to sustain ourselves in the planet. And because I also view myself as a higher being, I guess, a spiritual being, and I believe that whatever higher power entered into this creation, then I also view things such as trees, such as butterflies, such as just the dirt, the earth itself, the streams, the clouds, the air, everything. I view all of that also as something special, as something that also holds value, as something that is also part of this higher power. Once again, you can look at that at maybe varying degrees, but also as part of this higher power, as containing some type of deistic properties, I guess you could say, if that's even a word. I don't know. But and so everything to me also becomes more beautiful because I don't look at everything as being fallen anymore. I don't look at thorns as being a product of the fall anymore. Said that he's now going to have to Adam's now going to have to go work the fields, and he's going to have to deal with thorns and thistles and this, that, and the other thing, so that thorns and everything are a product of the fall. And I'm like, I don't believe that anymore. So I can even take a look at things like that with a little bit more beauty and appreciate it a lot more. I don't I look at, and I know this is a cliche thing, but I can even look at a butterfly now with a lot more, look at it as being a lot more special than what I did at one time. I appreciate dogs and pets a lot more. Not that I was mean to dogs, but I just value them more. So I'm just going to treat them better. Like, I'm going to care for their comfort. I'm going to care for their well-being. I'm going to hurt if I know that my dog is hurting. We have a pet rabbit, and I actually very much care about the well-being of that rabbit a lot more than I would have at one time, because that he actually holds value to me now. I actually look at that rabbit as being something valuable, and I hold everything up to a much more sacred level. And this isn't some new age or snowflakey type of thing here, concept. I mean, this is something that Native Americans believe. This is something that Aboriginal people from across the globe have believed. They cherished nature, they cherished animals, and they also looked at that as being part of a divine nature, a divine source. And so I very much look at it the same way. And it has helped me out a lot. And maybe because of how much that has helped me, maybe that is why I continue to believe in a higher power. Because I know what it has done to me to view things in that light. And if you've never had a problem viewing things as being special, as being valuable, and if you've always had compassion and have always had a heart for things like animals, the planet, and this universe, then maybe you don't need to believe in a God, or maybe you don't need that belief in something higher to place value on it, because that's just always been ingrained in you from the time you were young, and I can understand that. I'm not saying that I was raised in a way that we didn't value things like animals, because like my dad was never okay with us being mean to animals. And if we went hunting, we always, he kind of more taught us how to honor the animal that we were harvesting. And I mean, you even have to do that with cows. I mean, a hunter's just going out and harvesting his own food. There's nothing any more mean doing that than it is to buy your steak from the supermarket. I just think that, to me, it has helped me value a lot more things in my life, and it's helped me value other humans. I look at us as very much sacred people. I don't believe any of us are damned. I don't have anything that is telling me now that because I live within this certain border, or because I live within this certain religion, that I or the people around me are more special than anyone else. And that is a big thing. I think that if us humans as a collective could come to that level of reasoning and consciousness, this world would be a much, much, much better place. When you are actually talking about something that matters a lot to you and that might matter a lot to somebody else, it is extremely hard to keep it below 30 minutes. Like, it just is. It is hard, at least for me. Maybe there are people that can condense their thoughts a lot better than me. Maybe they talk a lot faster. They don't have all the trash words in there. and they're just more direct and to the point. Anyways, I think for this one here, that's where I'm going to call it good. I'm sure that I'm going to be talking on this subject a lot more, because this is the type of thing that I want to talk through, of how can I view humans, how can I develop that view of better than I already have, more than I already have, how can I view things like animals, how can I view things like nature, and what about like climate change? Like, I am not educated in that matter, because that was not something that in my past held any significance. I want somebody to come on here and talk about that with me. Tell me what you think about it, get into the science behind it. I don't want somebody to come on here that has always believed in climate change and not have any evidence and just be like, well, of course climate change is real, because why wouldn't it be? Like, no, come on here with some reasons. Like, I want to be educated in it, educate me in it. I'm not sitting there saying that I want to sit there and argue with you and tell you that you're not right. I'm just saying, if you want me to believe it, then bring something convincing. I think I'm going to cut it off here. Have a good one.